Okay, let's put our finger on the pulse of what's coming down the pike this next week and try and stay clear of the political shenanigans that are going on as best we can. I missed last week, and it was because too many things going on. I spent the entire weekend going through a my last educational experience of becoming a certified astrologer through ESAR. And that took a lot of hours. I used the whole entire weekend. Plus, this week I managed to have cataract surgery down on both my eyes. So that took up the rest of the week. And right now, here we are on today. It's Saturday, and the crystal clarity of the new cataracts or the new lenses in my eyes without the cataracts is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. But let's get into doing some astrology. We begin the week, and remember I chatted briefly, actually, probably more extensively about the kite pattern. That's this grand trine and this mini trine involving the outer planets, Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune. Well, this week, it's getting stimulated again. And here we are on Monday, and the moon is out of bounds. It's basically in the process. Have you noticed, looking up at the sky each night, how much higher in the sky that moon is? Yeah, it's because it's out of bounds. And this is Saturday. If I would just go back 2 days to Saturday, we look and say, oh, yeah, still out of bounds. So we get into this next week. I'm going to go right to Tuesday because it's on Tuesday that, oh, things just start kicking up. We have a nice sextile happening between Venus and Mars. Mars is up here in the sign of Libra. Venus is the rule of Libra, and therefore, Venus is in Leo right now. The Venus has something to say about and to Mars up there near the very end of Libra, saying, I know you generally are a very energized character, Mars, and Venus. While I'm here in Leo, I'm going to, throw some support behind you. So the question we have to have is, since this Mars is in Libra, is how effectively is this life dance that I'm doing with others going right now? You know, the possibility of, maybe some excitement being present, Leo and Libra and Mars and Venus. That's that kind of energy at work in a sextile. They're in a conversation quite dynamically with each other. But to add some extra dynamism to that, we see this trine line going over here to Chiron in retrograde and Mars, this opposition line coming to that same Chiron in Aries in retrograde. I'm not going to throw that square in there from the moon because it goes by so fleetingly fast. But anyway, Chiron, that maverick kind of energy, and also the archetype of the mentor, which is, oh yeah, a very significant and substantial factor when you're considering Virgo, the season that we are in. We're definitely going to cover a little bit more of that Virgoan thing as we take steps into this week. We go to Wednesday. On Wednesday, look at this. Mercury at 28 degrees of Virgo, opposite from Saturn at 28 degrees of Pisces, on this focal point of that, you guessed it, the kite, the focal point. And in tuning into what that mercurial focus in its own sign, Virgo, right now, could be bringing to focus for these three outer planets, Uranus. I am here to, you know, rattle the cage of life just a little bit to, challenge you, to make you potentially uncomfortable with the way things are so that you might say, uh, what's going on? And that's Uranus's function. As the great awakener, it has to rattle the cage of what it is that we've been doing for a while in such fashion that we're, off kilter. Just, just a little bit. It isn't what I thought it was. I'm not sure what it should be. And, you know, this is Uranus trying to wake you up to an alternative to the way things have been. Neptune comes along and says, I'm going to throw a little water onto this situation to see what washes out. You know, so the challenge that Neptune brings into this uh, configuration, once Uranus has you off kilter, that uh, submission, that sinking you into that water element, where after all, we're talking about Pisces here and Saturn. What is it that is the lesson plan that is trying to awaken within you while you're slightly off kilter from this Uranian dance? And how deep do you want to go? You know, the waters of truth, Neptune in version of Pisces. Neptune is in this consideration as well. That's why I keep throwing it in there. Right now, you are being queried, how stable is truth for you? You know, the Neptune energy is pouring the waters of truth upon you while you're slightly off kilter, so that you might awaken to the potential of something that you weren't aware of before. Ah, and then comes Pluto, the great planet of transformation, transubstantiation, total change that says that there are aspects within your makeup that must die or pass away in order for a new version of what it is that you can be to put in an appearance. This is these three outer planets all working, you know, in synchronicity with one another that's being brought to focus by this Mercury down here in Virgo, near the end of Virgo. And if you think about what is it that Virgo represents, Virgo is a process of refinement, or perhaps better, it could be seen as a refinement of technique. The earth energy there is, and the technique is, how can I do whatever it is that I'm doing better? How can I utilize the elements of what it is that's available to me in this moment to uh, make a version of this creative process that does what? It that uh, energizes the effectiveness of the cooperation or lack thereof of those that are in my inner circle, those that I work with. Uh, is there a version of what it is that I have been studying that um, that I can refine as a technique to inspire others to step up to the plate and say, gee, it would be nice to be mentored by you. There's something that you're offering that I don't know where it's coming from, but could you tell me more? The spontaneous recognition that mentorship is right there, ready to take place. And that's the focus, that Mercury in its own sign, right there on that kite. And we're not going to put that entirely to the side because, as you can see from looking at this chart, the sun is going to be heading into that relatively shortly this week, by the way. Other factors. Let's go to Thursday. On Thursday, Mercury moves across that line from the Virgoan thing where it's been, you know, using its thinking follicles to facilitate a most effective version of what it is that it wants to, you know, refine. Stepping across the plane into Libra, it's, oh yeah, I need to have others on this equation as well. Libra, the land of the other. And also, at the same time, you can see that it's still at the very focal point of that kite. And the kite is a process that is really looking at, you know, facilitating. Am I tuned in enough to what it is that those three outer planets are trying to uh, iron out, if you will, in this adventurous process of the deeper, more profound meaning of life? Mercury, how do we think? How do we communicate? Coming into the realm of Libra is saying, you know, I suspect that I may not be able to uh, bring to point the focus of what that transformational energy is trying to awaken me to by myself. This is very important because the process of engaging with others to compare notes, if nothing else, is critical in being able to um, enliven, inspire, uh, infuse the perspectives of others into the equation because we are not here doing this alone, never have been. The vitality of being engaged with others is very, very important. And that focus of this particular kite is at work right now. And the sun is coming right up there to do the dance in that same place this week. We go to Friday. Friday's a Venus day, and Venus on this day shifts from Leo into Virgo. Well, Venus is not happy in the sign of Virgo. It is said to be in its fall. This is Hellenistic astrology terminology, but to paint a picture for you of what a planet in fall means, it's kind of like Venus, you know, that process of um, engaging with others. What being in fall means, it's kind of like this is a really graphic image being at the bottom of a well, yelling out for help, but nobody can hear you. So, what might be transpiring as Venus on this Friday steps into Virgo for the first time for a few weeks is saying, you know, what's that going to do to that realm of otherness that we are all a part of? I see that potentially as a challenge, you know, being at the bottom of the well and trying to yell for help that nobody can hear. It would seem to, you know, kind of dampen, if you will, the process of really engaging with the other. Why would they want to pay attention to something that they cannot hear? There's an energy to start your weekend with, oh, I want to be really social and stuff. And it's like, yet at the very same time, the the social realm is, got this kind of peculiar energy afoot that says it may be a challenge to actually engage with other people meaningfully if they don't know where they're at. Well, okay, they know where they're at. They're in the bottom of the well, but they cannot communicate that to you effectively enough that you will pay attention to it. Big challenge. As we get to the weekend, you can kind of see that all kinds of things going on here in the chart. Aspects, aspects, aspects. Let's see. Oh, yeah, 19th. Yod. We have a yod. Yeah, this is going to throw mm, some kind of a monkey wrench into that Venusian factor that we were just talking about. And this is a yod where Venus is at the focal point. Yod is finger of God. Between this thing that says Pluto and Neptune, they're in conversation with each other, you know, waters of truth and total transubstantiation of what life was to what it could be, being reborn new, being brought to focus right here on this Venus that just stepped across this line into a realm where its ability to communicate effectively is most likely challenged. And that's part of this Friday. And that's why I say that as you go into this next weekend, you know, don't expect people to bend over backwards and be very clear with what it is that you're going to be share at the level of communication with one another. Also, this weekend is oh, this weekend is going to be the uh, eclipse, the solar eclipse, which is going to be happening at 29 degrees of Virgo. This is the second new moon of the month in Virgo because the first one was right there at the beginning, 0 degrees of Virgo. The thing that creates an eclipse is if the sun and the moon coming together, and you can kind of see the moon has been sneaking up here on the sun regularly, about 12 to 13 degrees a day, is that they are within a certain distance from the node of the moon, south node, north node. We had the full moon eclipse a week ago, and it takes about 2 weeks for the moon to make halfway around the circle. And we're going to have the full moon eclipse. It will be about 1 o'clock Pacific Daylight Time here on the West Coast. So visibility, yeah, should be visible somewhere around here in the United States. But to get in a consideration for the fact that it's a south node solar eclipse and our destiny line, south node, what was, north node, what could be the destiny line of life. This is on that south node. What was is brought to focus, not necessarily as a bad thing, but not something to get so distracted by that you think that this is my calling in life. I don't have to work very hard for the things that the South Node represents. It just comes naturally to me, and it should, because you've done it before and before and before and before. So it's natural. You can utilize that as long as you recognize there is a higher calling, North Node. Anyway, the South Node happening there. It's at 18 degrees of Virgo. I'm going to read you the Sabian symbol for that particular degree of Virgo. So you can get a feel for, you know, what in that South Node arena might it be worth paying attention to. It reads the image, a swimming race, and the keynote, a stimulation that comes from a group effort toward a spiritual goal. Now, where would Dan Rudyard have come up with that from? Further words, when a man has become an expert swimmer, he has symbolically learned how to operate in a new element. This element, water, represents the ever flowing stream of psychic energy and, in a sense at least, the astral world. In a still deeper sense, man is now able, mystically speaking, to cross the river and reach the other shore, or to swim back to its source. Whether or not the symbol should suggest the competitive spirit at work is questionable. At the biological level, a host of spermatozoa are swimming toward the ovum, and each presses on toward the goal, the act of impregnation. A seeker, after spiritual rebirth, actually does not strive alone. It is man who, acting through the most advanced individuals of the race, is taking a step toward rebirth or toward a new mutation. The personal ego-centered ambition to succeed and to be the first is indeed a sign of expectable spiritual failure. Got that? Failure to be that first, the one and only. At this fourth stage, we are confronted with a problem of interpretation. Is not ambition a subtle form of deviation under the pressure of ancient karma and the competitive spirit so valued by our civilization, a sign of failure to understand the deeper reality of existence? What is needed is emulation, not competition. And that's the arena within which this North Node, this new moon, is going to transpire. I was just looking ahead, quick glance to see what the Sabian symbol was going to be for the actual new moon, which we will get to. Anyway, that's just painting the arena of that South Node that is part of the focus for this particular upcoming solar eclipse on Sunday. And you kind of see there's the moon sliding up there again. On the 20th, Venus has moved into a direct square with Uranus. Can you perhaps sense, you know, an uneasiness for your Venusian side that this square with Uranus over there retrograde in the beginning of Gemini, where curiosity, Gemini, is at work, but it's retrograde. I'm kind of like feeling, you know, what is it that my cage is being rattled and trying to awaken me to with this particular type of dance going on between Venus down at the bottom of its well yelling for assistance and not being heard, and Uranus saying, with all of its level of Gemini curiosity, wake up. almost, as I'm doing this, I get this vision of waking up from a dream that you were at the bottom of a well and saying, wow, what was that all about? Anyway, the moon is working its way on through Virgo toward that Sunday eclipse. And there we are. It's Sunday. The moon here at 26 degrees of Virgo will definitely cross over the sun at 29 degrees of Virgo, very early part of 29 degrees of Virgo. And part of, that south node flavoring that I gave you to contemplate is also being enhanced by uh, this eclipse taking place on that very last degree of Virgo. Are you sensing any refinement in the techniques that you are using in whatever level they may be? That's what this particular new moon is asking us as we set our intention for the next lunar cycle, you know. Technically, at the end of Virgo, I've reached a point where I've come up with that technique or a set of techniques that are going to be able to allow me to be an appropriate mentor or teacher of what it is that is percolating within my heart. Well, the Sabian symbol for this particular solar eclipse, new moon, reads, totally intent upon completing an immediate task. A man is deaf to any allurement. And the keynote, the total concentration required for reaching any spiritual goal. And further words, this is the final symbol of the first half of the cycle. We're just getting ready to go through that fall equinox, the beginning of Libra, which is Monday of the next week. In the year cycle, the fall equinox is now at hand. Autumn begins. Through spring and summer, many ways and byways have been experienced. The last message of this hemicycle of the individuation is that on all decisive occasions, what must be done has to be done so intently that no outer voices can penetrate the mind, still less the soul. The neophyte stands at the gates of the sacred pyramid. There is only one step he can take ahead, or he is lost. This is the culmination step, the culminating step, the decision that results from a myriad of small choices. Still, a shadow of hesitation can remain. Attention may be distracted from the now by a voice from the past. Remember, I said this is a south node solar eclipse and new moon energy, glamorizing some old memory. The outer doors of perception and thought must be closed so the soul can complete its conquest of illusion. Well, you might say we have a small yet incredibly relevant task ahead of us as this week wraps up with the new moon right there on the verge of the cusp of our next sign, Libra, where the invitation goes out What is it that we came together to accomplish? And how might we best do that with each other? Is that enough to think about? I hope it is, because it should be an interesting week. I know the last one for me was. And, you know, the thing about eclipses are all about change. You know, instead of getting mired or stuck within a particular pattern that we have gone through over and over again, the eclipses bring about the opportunity to take a step beyond where is that we were into a realm that we don't know yet, but is required if change is to transpire. So, are we standing at that threshold where the next step is going to alter our trajectory so dynamically that we will no longer be the same? That is the invitation this week. That is the invitation that this conversation that our celestial neighbors are having right now, to say, oh, yeah, by the way, this is happening at the focal point of that kite. Are you going to allow those outer planet energies that are at work all the time, but more dynamically at this time, to awaken us to a new perspective of who we are, that has likely been waiting for that opportunity to put in an appearance? Are you holding it back? Are you making it a challenge for its presence to actually allow you to change into a new version of yourself? The opportunity is now, my friends. That's all I'm going to give you for this week. I trust that we will be able to, in our communications with one another, ferret out a most appropriate path forward.